Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. My name is Naftuli Moster, and I am the founder and executive director of Yaffed, Young Advocates for Fair Education. For several years, Yaffed has worked to address a major civil rights violation happening to tens of thousands of children in New York State. Around 100 ultra-Orthodox Yeshivas are failing to provide a sound basic education to their students in blatant violation of the law. Most Hasidic boys' schools offer only 90 minutes of secular education a day in elementary and middle school, and no secular education at all in high school. The consequences are dire, both for the community and for society at large, that has to shoulder the burden of an uneducated citizenry, the fastest growing population in New York, no less. Many Hasidic families are struggling unnecessarily. And for the people who want to leave the community, the struggle is multiplied. The deliberate denial of a basic secular education to Hasidic children who attend community schools is an issue that is largely unknown within the American Jewish community, let alone the general public. Hasidic teenagers of high school age typically have never read a novel, do not understand the rudiments of science, have no sense of history or proficiency in English. In fact, when I was a student in one of these very schools, we didn't learn much about even our own recent history past Moses and the splitting of the sea. We didn't learn about the Holocaust. There was recently an uproar that a small school district in Tennessee, which serves no more than 6,000 students, banned the book Mouse. Well, there are 100,000 Hasidic children right here in New York who are banned from reading it as well. I had no sense of recent history of my own people either. In fact, I only learned about Ellis Island and its connection to my own people from accidentally visiting it at the age 20, when my friend and I, who snuck out of Borough Park, intended to go to the Statue of Liberty and landed at Ellis Island. Imagine accidentally stumbling upon a basic fact that was hidden from you by your teachers, the history of the great waves of immigration of European Jews into America. In 2015, Yaffed filed a complaint with the New York City Department of Education, and they announced an investigation. Yet here we are nearly 7 years later, and they've yet to remedy the problem in the dozens of yeshivas we identified, and which they themselves found to be non-compliant. In fact, what we did learn was that the mayor's office under de Blasio intentionally slow-walked the investigation to curry favor with Hasidic leaders. Think about all the learning that the school children lost over the course of 7 years, learning they could never recover. Owing to the dire situation in Hasidic and Haredi schools, we appreciate the state's efforts to remedy the problem by promulgating new regulations. In a nutshell, these new regulations consist of 3 parts: the subject requirements, the enforcement mechanisms, and transparency and accountability measures. While some of these provisions aren't new, the enforcement mechanism and the transparency and accountability measures contain many new parts. These novel elements provide some reason for hope. We do, however, have some serious concerns with aspects of these regulations. We believe that at the moment they include several loopholes that, if left unaddressed, could allow the status quo to continue. And we cannot allow the status quo to continue. So in our communications with the State Education Department, both leading up to the release of these regs and since then, we've made it clear what our concerns are. And during the public comment period, Yaffed will educate the public about these concerns as well. We hope New Yorkers will understand the need to close these loopholes and will join us in calling on NYSED to do so. Thank you, and I will now call on Shiny Weichman, a mother of a Hasidic Yeshiva student, to say a few words.
Good afternoon, and thank you for being here. My name is Shiny Weichman. I am the mother of a Yeshiva student who is currently being denied an education at Bubba 45, a Hasidic boys' school in Brooklyn, New York. In July of 2015, almost 7 years ago, I joined 51 other Yeshiva graduates and parents and signed a formal complaint with the New York City Department of Education about the lack of secular education at my then 8-year-old son's school, the Square Hasidic Yeshiva in Williamsburg, Brooklyn. In the years since, I have pleaded multiple times with city officials, including members of the Department of Education and panel for education policy, to take the issue of my son's educational neglect seriously. I've also written to the state and to the New York City mayor, all of which have fallen on deaf ears. My son is now 15 and a half years old. These new regulations, as written, will unfortunately not be adopted before my son graduates from his yeshiva, which means that he will forever be harmed and handicapped by his lack of education. Outside of the Hasidic world, in high schools across America, students are taught to value curiosity and are exposed to a wide body of knowledge. They are encouraged by their teachers, parents, and principals to pursue academic achievement and dream of college and professional success. But my son, meanwhile, is not even being taught English, math, science, and social studies, let alone being supported to pursue his passions. I have done everything in my power to supplement his education at home to help him achieve his goals, like urging him to use Khan Academy to learn United States history. But as a single mother with limited resources, there's only so much I've been able to do. But this burden should never have fallen on me in the first place. It should be the job of his New York-based school and the job of the government to make sure that my son's school and all other non-public schools follow the law. This is why these regulations are so important. Once finally enacted, they will hopefully prevent children from being denied an education the way my son and tens of thousands of his peers have been denied until now. I speak not only for myself, but for the thousands of mothers who feel the same sense of deep concern for their children's futures as I do for my son, but are voiceless on this matter out of fear of being ostracized by their Hasidic community. I urge the state education department to strengthen the regulations, to close any loopholes, and to adopt them swiftly. This injustice to our children must end. Once again, my name is Haredi Weichman. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Shindi, for your bravery and your advocacy on behalf of your own child and the 100,000 other children who are not receiving the education they're entitled to. Now we will hear a few words from Nancy Kaufman, chair of the New York Jewish Agenda and a renowned Jewish leader with years of advocacy and government affairs under her belt.
Thank you, Naftali. I'm here as the chair of New York Jewish Agenda because we represent a broad cross-section of the Jewish community of New York. And what I want to share is that while Jews are known as the people of the book, we have always been a people that craves learning, all learning, religious learning and secular learning. Yet an important part of our community is not being given access to quality secular education. Far from being a problem just afflicting the ultra-Orthodox community, it's a problem that afflicts society as a whole, because these are young people who are coming, as Shindi just said, into adulthood and into society without the basic skills necessary to be able to survive and thrive in the world that they will be living in. Out of another core Jewish belief, we believe that all of Israel is responsible for one another. So it's with that perspective that I support Yaffed in supporting children in Hasidic and Haredi schools to receive the education to which they are entitled to, according to New York state law. There is no conflict between receiving a quality Jewish religious education and, at the same time, receiving a quality secular education. In fact, as a parent of a day school student myself, who went through 9 years of religious school training, she had both. She had a quality secular education and a quality religious education as well. Today, last week, the regulations were issued, and by asking for compliance with these new draft regulations, we act with responsibility as a Jewish community to our brothers and sisters in the Hasidic community. The draft regulations would simply give the 1,800 non-public schools all across New York multiple ways to demonstrate that they are delivering their students a foundational secular education, something that we would expect for all of our children. Nobody is trying to take away any school's freedom to pass on the fundamentals that they want to, whether it's religious or secular, because that would be unconstitutional, of course. But nor are we saying that all religious schools are failing our children, because they're not. The new rules, though, would finally provide a framework for real oversight and, just as important, real consequences. It'll now be up to the mayor, hopefully once these regulations and the loopholes are closed, are implemented, it'll be up to Mayor Eric Adams to make sure they are enforced. And we stand in support and support as a community that cares about the future of our Jewish children. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nancy.